Hey guys, this is wersderf, and today I have episode 4 of World of Tanks for Beginners. And on this episode, I'm going to be going over heavy tanks, specifically their role in the battlefield and the type of general characteristics they have. Alright, we'll get right to it. Now in the garage we have the T-34 Premium Heavy Tank. It is Tier 8 and Premium, obviously. This is a pretty good example of a general heavy tank. And when I say general, I mean that for most of the heavy tanks in World of Tanks, they will share these characteristics. And of course, there will be some exceptions, as there will be exceptions to the general characteristics of medium tanks, light tanks, artillery, tank destroyers. But I think the T-34 represents heavy tanks pretty well. So the first thing that the T-34 has that is general for heavy tanks is it has armor. Now, if you know a good amount about World of Tanks, is that the American heavy tanks after Tier 7 in general do not have the best hull armor until you get to that M103 right here, where it has pretty decent hull armor. But I'm not talking about the hull armor, I'm talking about the turret armor. The turret armor on this vehicle is 279 millimeters thick, with minimal weak spots, like this cupola here. But when you use this tank properly and you position yourself in a good way, you will be able to use its armor effectively. Another thing that this tank has is a big gun. One of the characteristics of heavy tanks is that they are able to dish out a lot of damage, whether you're near or far. And this tank is definitely no exception. It has a 120 millimeter gun at Tier 8, the largest of the heavy tanks at Tier 8. And it can deal a lot of damage. Another good example is this Carnarvon. While it doesn't have the biggest alpha damage, it has a good rate of fire and can deal a lot of damage. Or we can look at this IS-3, the Tier 8 Russian heavy tank. It has 122 millimeter BL9, which is a great gun at Tier 8. And there are many examples of heavy tanks having big guns. Carnarvon being kind of an outlier with heavy tanks. Usually they have bigger guns that deal a lot of alpha damage. Another characteristic, which is not necessarily a good thing, is that they are slow. In general, in general, heavy tanks are slow. With regards to turret traverse, track traverse, speed limit, the French tanks being the exception to all of those. This tank is not the fastest, with a top speed of 35 kilometers per hour and an abysmal 18 degrees per second turret traverse. The last general characteristic of heavy tanks is that they have a lot of hit points for their tier. This T-34, for example, has 1,500 hit points, compared to another Tier 8 tank destroyer. It has 350 more hit points. Compared to a Tier 8 light tank, as the 1390, it has 400 more hit points than that tank. If you want to look, you can see Tier 8 mediums are close to there with 1,300. And heavy tanks of their tier will have the most amount of hit points, with very few exceptions. And that allows heavy tanks to fulfill their role of being a big shield and the brawn of the team. And we'll move on from the characteristics of heavy tanks to the role that heavy tanks should play on the battlefield. One of those is to hold choke points on the map. These choke points on the map are areas where tanks meet up, where flanks are, where tanks can move around on the battlefield. These points are very important for victory because you have to hold these points in order to win and hold off enemies from flanking you or push through the enemy lines, so you can flank them. Another goal of a heavy tank driver should be to deal a lot of damage. Considering that most heavy tanks have big guns, they do a pretty good job of that. In tandem with that, you need to be the brawn of the team, where you need to give the enemy a beating, like not scooch aside and get them in the side like a medium tank would be. You're As a heavy tank, you're right in their face, punching them right in the nose, and with the big guns and the armor that you have, you can get to those choke points, deal a lot of damage, punch the enemy right in the face, and deal some real damage to the enemy. Another goal of a heavy tank driver should be to survive. Heavy tanks are the main battle tanks of your team, and if they do not survive, then they cannot serve their purpose on the battlefield. And to show an example of some of these roles that the heavy tank should play, I have a game that I can show you of me playing in the T-34. So let's get right to it. All right, so I have a game on Airfield. There's so many maps in this game, it's so hard to memorize them all. So I have a game on Airfield in my T-34 tank, and if you look at the tanks on each team, I have a pretty good matchup here. It's tier 8. This tank can get in tier 10s, unlike some tier 8 premium tanks. So it's a pretty good matchup against tier 8s, and as soon as I see this matchup, I'm thinking I need to get to a choke point on the map. And I choose what I believe to be one of the most important, is around this E5, E6 area, more like E6. I decide I need to go there because I am a heavy tank, I am top tier, and I need to hold that position. Use my gun, take out some enemies, deal some damage. So that's exactly what I'm going to do in this game. I'm heading to that area where I will spend most of the battle in there. And don't take that as a bad thing, as you'll see that I do pretty well for my team by holding that area. Being a heavy tank, it's very integral to find one of the choke points in the map. Use your armor, use your gun, deal some damage, and survive. So I'll skip ahead a little bit. Probably should have fast forwarded. So I'm getting into position right here. This is one of the most important parts of the map. Being that this tank has not the greatest aim time, there's some opportunities that I miss. But right here, okay, I'm coming around this corner. I see this Waffen trigger. He is out of position. He has no business being here. And I put a nice punching blow right into him. Peeking around the corner, and he's gonna try and put a shot into him, seeing that he has the 150 millimeter, but I'm not gonna give him a chance. Doesn't matter how much he angles his armor, he's not going to escape this 120 millimeter. And not to mention that this gun has 248 millimeters of penetration, which is a monstrous amount. This tank used to be a much higher tier than what it is. So I've already taken out one tank. I've dealt two penetrating shots into the enemy. Let's keep that going. Right now I'm trying to sneak a shot into the tanks below, but I spot this Jagd Panther 2, and that is a very high value target. So I decided to shoot at it. I knew I didn't have as much time to fire because I was going to get shot by him, so I shoot it before I should have. I should have aimed a little bit more, and I shoot him a little bit early, and I take a shot from the side. But that's part of what the job is. You have to be willing to take shots when it's necessary. While it didn't work out, I saw it as a necessary shot to try and get, because this Jagd Panther 2 is a very dangerous tank, and I'm able to get a better shot later. And I'm still in this area. There's all these tanks coming towards this area, and you can see some of my teammates are also there. This Tier 7 T-29, and there's a train that doesn't like me recording my video, and this IS-6 that shows up around the choke point, and he thinks he can push me out. But I'm going to continue to put shots into him, punishing him for him even thinking that he can uproot me. And from this point, you can see that there are so many different enemies coming around, and I'm able to kill 2 enemies already, put shots into more than 2, and this IS-6. And right here, I'll pause for a second. It's important to note what I'm doing with my T-34 in that instance. That IS-6 I knew was loaded, and he's going to fire at me. So in order to protect myself, I use my armor effectively. Knowing from what I said before, this tank does not have hull armor, and that 122mm from the IS-6 will take out almost a third of my hit points if I let him penetrate me. So what I do is I use my good gun depression and hide my hull armor. It's not completely hidden, but it's mostly hidden from him. And what happens is he shoots me right in the turret, and it doesn't penetrate because I use my armor effectively. And I'm able to put a shot into him. Alright, let's go back to there. So, looking at the game, we're 6-8. We're down. Okay, we're 7-8 now. But just a second ago, we were 6-8. And we were down 2 tanks. And it's not unrecoverable. But we definitely need to turn this game around. And this T-34 one thinks he can just stroll out while I'm still here holding this position. Well, he was wrong. So let's look at what heavy tanks are supposed to be doing and how I'm doing on that scale. I'm surviving the battle, and unfortunately I don't do the best job hiding my whole armor as I get tracked and take damage from the IS-6, but I get to kill him. On to what I was saying before. I'm surviving the battle. I'm taking minimal amount of damage. I'm dealing a massive amount of damage. I've already killed 4 of the enemy tanks. I'm holding this choke point, definitely. I've been here the entire game, not letting any enemy slip through. Not even that Type 59, which went around me. He couldn't survive my wrath. So I have 5 kills, and it is now an even game. And using my tank, as I've been saying this entire video, I've been able to positively influence how my team has done in this game. And right now, I do not want to suffer a hit from that Jagdpanther 2. He is in a great position, so I decide, instead of going up there, I will go around the bottom, because I see this medium tank over here, and I think that he can support me if that Jagdpanther takes a shot at me. Turns out he was either a bot or AFK, and he wasn't really doing anything anyways, but I use this advantage, or I take this situation and I take advantage of it, and I decide to move up after I peek around this corner for a bit to make sure this Jagdpanther isn't trying to sneak a shot into me. So in just a second, I'm going to move up and continue moving. And as you can see to the south, we have 2 heavy tanks, the IS and the IS-3, fighting along this other side of the map, the south side of the map where the water is. That's another important choke point on this map. And if those 2 heavy tanks and whoever else went down there did not go and hold that choke point, then I would have been dead a long time ago, because we would have got flanked from the enemy and slaughtered, and I would not have done as well. And here we can see the Jagdpanther 2 did not want to get killed by us and ran away before we could punch him right in the face, as I've said before. So I'm gonna speed it up a bit. T-34, as I said, is a heavy tank, and it is slow. It is quite slow. So I need to speed it up a bit to make it a little bit more exciting. So right here, the game is pretty much in our hands. I have half my hit points left. The IS-3 is doing well himself, and I'm searching for a top gun, and I get it. So 6 kills. The IS-3 had a good game as well with 4, holding that south side. 2 main top tier heavies pulling through the game, and that's really what playing a heavy tank is all about, is taking advantage of your opportunities and reaping the benefits. So that's the end of the game. Let's look at some post-game stats. All right, so that was a pretty good result. I managed to get the top gun and a first class medal with 1300 base XP. Well, okay, 1300 base XP with a the premium multiplier put in there. I did manage to get 7 kills, so obviously top gun, and 1300 damage, alongside a very admirable 2900 damage and 3100 damage from the IS and the IS-3 respectively. Us 3 were we had 12 out of the 14 kills. That's what heavy tanks are there for. They're there to do damage and kill enemies and be the brawn, like I've said multiple times in this video, the brawn of the team. I did not take as many hits as you might expect when I'm playing a heavy tank, since I don't have as much hull armor and my gun reloads for a long time. I played the strategy of peek-a-booming instead of sit there out in the open and take shots, which, if I was in the right position, I would be welcome to doing that, since my turret is very well armored. But that it should be the goal of a heavy tank driver, is to survive the battle, whether you are not taking hits, but bouncing shots off you or avoiding fire completely. So that's my video. I hope you learned something. There are 3 other episodes in this series. They're very preliminary, like they're for beginners. And if you're here to learn more about World of Tanks than what I'm saying right now, you can stick around, because as I get further into the series, I'll get more in depth. But anyways, if you learned something, then I implore you to subscribe so you don't miss another one of these videos. Otherwise, this has been wersderf. Peace, love, and joy.